Really kind of want you to, I don't know, I think I should do a one-arm push-up now or something. No, I'm not going to do it, no. It's been crazy weekend for Lynn and I. Speaking kind of nostalgically, we went to the Doobie Brothers Boston concert. Yeah, it's incredible. This weekend, my friend Jeff Nielsen, I went to college with him, and he's a pastor in Kansas, and his mom and dad live here in town, but his mom, June, had a stroke, and so he was in town. I went and saw him and June, and talking. I said, dude, I'm going to the Doobie Brothers concert tonight. He goes, no way. I was like, yeah. And I said, I haven't been there since I think I was a freshman. I hadn't seen him since I was a freshman in college. He goes, 1979? Yeah, he goes, I was at that. He says, I go, really? Yeah. Says, I remember the opening act was they sang, what was the song they sang now? It was a one-hit wonder song. Anyway, you can look it up on Google. April 26, 1979. There you go. Look it up. Anyway, it was an incredible concert, great people, but I tell you the truth, I didn't get goosebumps until this morning when we started singing that song. Amazing stuff, you guys. It's so cool. And very, very fun. Several years ago, Jim Collins wrote a book called Good to Great. If you're in business, you probably have studied that book, maybe in college courses, and you took a look at that. He studied 1,100 different companies and found a handful of them over a course of 40 years, went from a good company to a great company. And he looked at the characteristics and qualities of the leadership there and the employees and what it took to go from a good company to a great company. And he says that being good is a threat to being great. And think about that. It probably would say that's probably true. If we're just settling for good, and occasionally I even hear that here, we'll say things like, well, that was good enough. What? Well, good enough? I mean, who wants to have a good enough marriage? I don't want a good enough marriage. Who wants to be a good enough dad? I don't want to be a good enough dad. I want to be a great dad. I don't want to settle for, oh, you're good. I want to have a great marriage, a great relationship with my kids. I want to be a part of a great church. I don't want to be part of this is good. That's a good church. I want to be part of a good, let's be part of a great. And Collins would come up with different things. It would take a company needs good disciplined people, good disciplined action, good disciplined thought. So over the next couple of weeks, the next 8 weeks, we're going to take a look at some qualities to move us individually from unimpressive to great. We start this study with a farm boy, kind of in the middle of nowhere kind of kid. Against all odds, he saves his nation, and the nation of Israel was probably at its lowest point in the history of that nation. Morally bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt, economically bankrupt, militarily bankrupt. I mean, they're a mess. And they've been taken over by the Midianites, a ruthless group of people who treated them harshly, and in fact had pushed them up into the mountains and into the caves to live. That kind of sounds familiar, right? Let's move them out. So Gideon, our hero, he's a very timid guy. Very, he's not a leader. And in Judges 6:11, it says, the angel of the Lord came and sat beneath the great tree of Ophrah, which is not the tree of Oprah, I'm sure a great tree. But it says, which belonged to Joash of the clan of Abiezer. Gideon, the son of Joash, was threshing wheat at the bottom of a winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. So here, Gideon, he's trying to get a little bit of grain. And in order to do that, he doesn't want to be out in the open. And so he's down at the bottom of a winepress hiding from the Midianites, because if they see him doing this, they're going to take his stuff. They might even kill him for it. So this is kind of the situation. They're in the, hills and the caves. He's at the wine press eking out a little bit of stuff here. And out of just being fearful. Verse 12 says, the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, mighty hero, the Lord is with you. Another translation says, mighty warrior. He's like, you talking to me? And what a weird statement. This guy is afraid of his own shadow. He's not a leader. He's Chicken Little. He doesn't have a whole lot going for him. Verse 13 says, Sir Gideon replied, if the Lord is with us, then why has all this happened to us? You ever ask that question? If God's on my side, then why is my life so messed up? Why are bad things happening to me? Why is my mom and dad getting divorced? Why did my dad lose his job? Why am I, why, God? If you're for me, boy, then I'd hate to see you against me. This is terrible. And he's like, sure, if he was with us, then why are we messed up? Where are all the miracles? Our ancestors told us about it. We heard the great stories of the rescue of our nation from Egypt, but it sounded like fairy tales to me. That probably didn't even happen. It was just a bunch of old women telling us stories to get us to go to bed at night and feel better about ourselves. That didn't happen. Miracles don't happen. Victories don't happen. Didn't they say the Lord brought us up out of Egypt, but now the Lord has abandoned us, handed us over to the Midianites? Then the Lord turned to him and said, go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I'm sending you. But Lord, how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I'm the least in my entire family. I'm a nobody from a hick group of folks. We're the least of the least. Like Manasseh is the worst tribe of Israel. My family is the poorest tribe in Manasseh, and I'm the youngest of the family. You have picked a loser. I'm not a winner. I'm a loser. And I'm okay with that, but I'm not a leader. I got nothing here. And nobody's going to follow me. They're going to laugh. And I'm not, he's like, I'm just really not convinced of that. Have you ever kind of come up with some excuses when God's asked you to do something? You're just like, I think you get the wrong person. I don't see me doing any of that. I don't have much of a Bible knowledge or education. I've never done anything like that. I don't know what I'm doing. Why would you ask me to do something like that, God? I don't have enough time. I don't have enough energy. I'm not very creative. I'm not a good speaker. I don't do any of this stuff. And you got the wrong person. Let's just pause for a second. Do you think that God wants to use you? Yes or no? I don't know. Think about it. I don't have much experience. I'm too old or too poor or too young or too much of a bad past. I don't think so. Have you ever had somebody in your life that believed in you? Maybe a coach, maybe a teacher, maybe a parent, maybe somebody come alongside you and says, I think you can do this. And you've never seen yourself doing that before, but somebody spoke into your life and said, you know what, I think you got what it takes. And I think you can do this. But you've never seen yourself doing that before. Well, kind of keeping in the theme of Rocky, now Rocky 2, Rocky's going to go fight Apollo Creed again for the heavyweight title. He's training. Adrian, his wife, is pregnant, and he's worried about her. His training's not going very well. He's distracted. His coach, Mick, is getting super upset with him because he's not giving much. Mick knows in order for us to beat Apollo Creed, you're going to have to give everything you got. And he's trying to motivate him, and he can't do it. And Rocky leaves the gym early, and he's just not going well. Adrian has her baby, but she goes into a coma, and Rocky's he's kind of done. somebody to believe in you. I want you to do this. And maybe, again, guys, when your dad believes in you, you'll crash through the gates getting, let's go for it. But so many of us wish our dad would speak into our lives that way, and we look for all kinds of that stuff. Or maybe as a teacher, and we go, let's do this. And maybe your spouse says, I believe in you, you can do this. And it makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it? But what if God believed in you? Would that make any difference to you at all? If God believed in you? God wants to change you from a loser to a leader, and he lets you know that he believes in us. Romans 8:31 says, what shall we say about such wonderful things as these? If God is for us, who can be against us? My friend Terry Koopman recently climbed a 14,000-foot peak in Colorado. He'd never done anything like that before. Terry's a flatlander. He just likes Omaha. This is nice, And so some guys convinced him to go with him from our church. They went up and they climbed this. And he was telling me afterwards, he says, it was nothing like I'd ever seen before, done him before. When I got to the top of that peak, he said, I didn't think I was going to make it. And over again, these guys kept saying, Terry, you can do this. You can do this. One more time, one more step. And he got up to that point and said, I did something I never thought I would do ever in my life. Because somebody encouraged me to do it. So Gideon is convinced that God has called him and wants him to do this. And in Judges 6:17 says, Gideon replied, well, if you're truly going to help me, show me a sign to prove that it's really the Lord speaking to me. Well, don't go away. And then he says, don't go away until I come back and bring my offering to you. So he says, I know if this is really the Lord, then I'm going to give you an offering. Gideon hurried home, cooked a young goat. With a basket of flour, he baked some bread without yeast, and carrying the meat in the basket and broth in a pot, he brought them out and presented them to the angel who was under the great tree. And again, Gideon's dirt poor. They don't have much. He gets the goat. Probably nobody knows he's even doing this. And brings it back and offers it to the Lord. The angel of God said to him, place the meat and the unleavened bread on this rock and pour the broth over it. And Gideon did as he was told, and the angel of the Lord touched the meat and the bread with the tip of the staff in his hand. The fire flamed up from the rock and consumed all he brought. The angel of the Lord disappeared. Think about that. I mean, this guy's dirt poor. He offers this offering. What just happened here? I gave you a goat. You get. You ever give your offering like that and go, it's gone. When Gideon realized that the angel Lord, it was the angel of the Lord, he cried out, "Oh, sovereign Lord, I'm doomed!" I've seen the angel of the Lord face to face. Incredible moment here. So the angel in verse 25 says, that night the Lord said to Gideon, take the second bull from your father's herd, the one that's 7 years old, pull down your father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asherah pole standing beside it. Then build an altar to the Lord your God here on the hilltop sanctuary, laying the stones carefully. Sacrifice the bull as a burnt offering on the altar, using as fuel the wood of the Asherah pole you cut down. So Gideon took his 10 servants and did what the Lord commanded. He did it all at night because he was afraid of the other members of the father's household and the people of the town. So he says, before we go into battle, here's the test. Your family has an altar in the backyard to a false god. Before we go forward with this, you're going to cut that down. You're going to take that wood and you are going to use it to offer a sacrifice to the Lord our God. This is a test. Are you really on my side or not? I need complete allegiance. See, the nation of Israel had gone so far from the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob that they began to worship other gods, importing them from other cultures around them, looking for some, again, they've been taken over by the Midianites. They think God's abandoned them, so hey, let's grab one of theirs. And they just grab one and looking for some sort of lucky charm that'll help them navigate through life. They're in a mess. And they build this altar to Baal. And the Asherah pole was a disgustingly, much like a sexual altar. And so he says, you got to get rid of all that stuff. You cut it down, you burn the bull on there, and you do this, and then we will have victory. I need complete allegiance. Remember what we talked about. Exodus 23, you must not have any other God before me. I mean, they'd forgotten the very basics of faith. They had gone so far away. Do you have a Baal in your backyard? Something that competes for your time and energy and money? Something that you've trusted in, kind of give you security, good luck? Maybe it's a thing, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a boat, maybe it's a football team. You need to clean up your backyard. This is his daddy's altar. He tears it down at night because he's afraid of his dad, afraid of his family. His family had been worshiping this God for years, and this is going to ruin everything. It's going to go against tradition. It's going to go against the whole town, and he's not going to win any popularity contest. It's probably going to cost him his life. And so he does this, and he goes and he gets the cow, and he offers it as a sacrifice and burns it. And the next morning, people are getting up, and they're smelling barbecue. Like, what is that? And some of the older folks are going, I remember that smell. I remember when we used to offer sacrifices to the God of Abraham and Jacob and Isaac. I remember. It's been so long. But people weren't real happy with that. Early the next morning, as the people of the town began to stir, someone discovered the altar of Baal had been broken down. The Asherah pole beside it had been cut down. In their place, a new altar had been built, and there were remains of a bull that had been sacrificed. People said to each other, who did this? And after asking around and making a careful search, they learned that it was Gideon, son of Joash. They were so distraught over the Asherah pole being cut up and a new altar that had been born and a cow that had been slain. They said, let's look around. And they began to look at the dust, like, I recognize that sandal print. Let's get some DNA samples. And they found out it was Gideon, that stupid little kid. We're going to get him. And so they go and they bring out your son. He must die for destroying the altar of Baal, cutting down the Asherah pole. We're not going to tolerate this. Joash shouted to the mob that confronted him, why are you defending Baal? Are you going to argue his case? Whoever pleads his case will be put to death by morning. If Baal is truly God, let him defend himself and destroy the one who broke down this altar. Somehow, Gideon's faith now pours into his father, and dad says, no, we're not going to do this anymore. How many things have we put up on a pedestal that we think are super important, we spend a lot of time and money and energy on, only to get bored with it and disappointed with it, and then continuing to worship it? So Gideon's dad comes to his defense. Gideon's courage gets to him. So here, just a few verses later, it says, the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon with power. He blew a ram's horn as to call to arms, and the men of the clan of Abiezer came to him. The Spirit of the Lord had clothed Gideon with power. Now he passed the test, and as a result, he gets this power. Before that, he was powerless. And now, as a result of passing the test, of destroying the altar that had been built and worshipped at, he cleans house, and now the Spirit of God is on him. Have you ever thought, well, I sure wish God would do something like that to me. I sure wish I'd had the Spirit of God with me. Wish he'd do something like that now with me. Well, Galatians 3:27 says this, for all of you who are baptized into Christ have been clothed with Christ. The Spirit of God is clothing you now. How do you get power in your life? You get it by passing the test. Oftentimes when we have a test, we tend to respond in a few ways. Sometimes we just get cranky. Sometimes we get irritable. Sometimes we cuss out some folks. Sometimes we even cuss out God. That just means we're trying to handle our testing without the Spirit of God. Gideon is now ready for battle. He blows the horn. Everybody gathers around. Thousands of people show up. They're going to fight. Think about this. This guy who couldn't even tie his sandals now is going to lead an army. There's 32,000 soldiers. That's a pretty big group. He's the commanding officer of 32,000. I mean, a few days before, in the bottom of a wine press, scared to death. Now he's going to be the commanding officer of 32,000 soldiers. God says, well, that's great, Gideon. Way to go. Good job. But there's too many of them, and I don't want you to get any credit at all for this. I don't want anybody worshiping you. So I want you to ask the soldiers, any of you scared can go home. So he says, any of you guys scared, you can go home. Gideon's like, I hope nobody leaves. But 22,000 leave. He's got 10,000. He's like, and again, like, we're not following Gideon. Gideon's a wuss. We're not, I used to beat him up in grade school. We're not following him. And so he leaves. 10,000 leave, and everybody's like, okay. And then God says, well, that's great, Gideon. You cut it down a little bit, but you still got too many. I want you to take them down the river and tell them to get a drink, and they have them to lap it up like a dog. We're going to send home, and anybody who cups it up with their hand, drinks from it, is a prepared soldier. We know that soldier is going to be able to fight because he's staying on alert. And so Gideon says, okay, you guys go down there and take a drink. And he watched, and 300 did it the correct way. And the rest of them had to go home. So now Gideon's got 300 soldiers, 450 to 1 odds here. It's not looking good. And God says, well, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you some equipment to help you with that. And Gideon's like, I hope it's a tank. Something here. F-22. He says, you're going to take a clay pot, a torch, and a trumpet. And Gideon's like, what? Those are not weapons. Clay pot, torch, trumpet? Can we get a slingshot? Here's what we're going to do. You're going to gather those 300 guys, and we're going to surround the 145,000 in camp. It's going to be a huge deal. You're going to light the torch, break the clay pot, blow the trumpet. It's going to confuse the soldiers. They're not going to know what's going on. They're going to run out of their tents, grab their sword, and they're going to think that there's a huge army out there, and they're going to start slaying whoever's running by them. So they do that. They break the clay pots, the torch, and there's trumpet, and there's confusion. Everybody from the Midianites run out. They're grabbing swords, and they kill each other. And the next morning they wake up. There's not one Midianite alive. And 300 soldiers. So what just happened here? And they provide a great victory for the nation of Israel. Gideon becomes a national hero. Gideon was a nobody who became a somebody because he listened to God and put his faith and trust in him. And so don't limit God. Because he really hasn't limited you. You believe in God, that's great, but he believes in you. Isn't that incredible? He would believe in you. So what are we waiting for? I believe in you, and so does he. Let's take it. We are ready, God, at this point to admit that we've probably been worshiping in an altar that we shouldn't have been. It hasn't even given us any good luck. We feel a lot like the Israelites. And God, our life's full of confusion and disappointment and discouragement. It's full of losses. And so maybe for some of us here today in this room, we're just going to go home. We're going to take care of the gods that we have been worshiping at, and clean house, and get rid of the stuff that we've been trusting in that we know we can live without. But we can't live without you. So give us our clay pot and our lantern and our trumpet. We'll go. In Christ's name, amen.